Just to do a little recap, it's been suggested that every story and everyone's story is our story, and that every character and archetype and symbol in every story is an aspect of ourself, an aspect of our psyche. And these stories over the many years are like links in a never-ending chain, a chain that has no beginning and no end. But these links sometimes have been an exploration into a word or a theme, or like ingredients that we've placed in a pot that have to be cooked up in our inner cauldron. But it can be said that the stories of late are like threads that are being woven together to create something that perhaps is not yet clear to us. Could it be that it's like that prayer rug woven by the wife of the founder of the Nashbandi order when he was jailed for heresy, that woven into that rug was the design of the lock on the door that kept him enslaved. And from that story we know that the key to that lock is within our self. But the stories of late, the threads, like that one with the mythical Simurgh bird, whose magic feathers, when burned, can call down that bird in times of our need. Or the story of the genie that came out of the well and gave us the magic word that could cast out any demon. Or the rainbow bird in the topmost tree that when comes unbidden to us, when we stop seeking and calling for it. And perhaps the last story told, like the jeweler, whose creativity and ingenuity saved his prized possession from Satan. So here's another thread for our weaving. It's the story of a small fishing village that was nestled in a little tributary of a very great river. Now all of the inhabitants of that village were fishermen, and every day they went down and cast their nets and lived from the abundance of fish that came to that small inlet. But although for the most part the inhabitants of that village were quite content, amongst them was one who could only be described as the town bully. He was big and brawny, and you might say even a tad sadistic, because he went around with his cudgel and he challenged not only the men of the village to wrestle with him and fight so that he could always win and congratulate himself, but he bedeviled the women of the village too. He tipped over the baskets that they carried on their head after they'd gathered the fish. He disturbed them in every way that he could. And people had to tolerate him, and it seemed that his sadism grew. Bearing this cudgel and wielding it everywhere he went. But then one day, a young being, somewhat of small stature and a little coffee-coloured, wandered into the village with a satchel on his back, woven out of reeds. And he said that he was a travelling student, moving from place to place, and he'd just come from a village on the main river, and he sought hospitality for the night. Well, as it happened with the villagers, they did not very often have strangers come into their midst, so they welcomed him, and the women immediately started to bake goods and bring fish so that they could offer him what it was that they had. So an evening meal was arranged and all the visitors came. Now it was noted that this young being was quite a gentle soul, quite serene, you might say, and so the villagers embraced him with warmth, not just that which was usually given to strangers who came that way. But as it happened, during the feasting, the bully got up from amongst those who were gathered and challenged the young man to a fight. Now the villagers were aghast at this. How dare this bully get up and challenge someone who they had given hospitality to? But they could do nothing, and no one arose amongst them to challenge him. But this quiet young being said, "Yes, I'll gladly wrestle with you." And so immediately the villagers made a space. And of course, as was the bent, men began to bet on who was going to win this wrestling match. But the young man said, "Well, you know, I'm not very good with the cudgel because I usually only fight with wet fish." And I happen to have a couple of fish that I've gathered from the village that I've just been across the way. And of course, since I'm the one who's being challenged, then I'm the one who can choose what kind of weapon is to be used. Well, the bully said, "Oh yes, I can fight with anything. A wet fish will do me, I'll fight with anything." So the young man opened his little satchel, and in that were two rather long fish, unusual, not like the ones that the villagers caught. And the young man said to the bully, "Well, of course, there's something that I have to tell you, that one of these fish is poisoned. And if you happen to catch it by the tail and grip it so that you can hit somebody, you could be deadly poisoned. So, you know, I'm sure you're a brave man, that you like to have this wager. It won't bother you. You choose the fish that you want to have from this basket." But the bully went quite white in the face and ashen, and all the villagers noticed it, and he blustered a little bit. He said, and so the bully said, no, I don't wrestle with, I don't want to get caught in this kind of, this is just kid stuff for me." And so the bully left the gathering, disappeared, and the villagers and the young man sat down and finished their feasting. And they were very happy. There was a whole air, the air had changed. And so there was a little bit of gaiety going on there. But after the feasting was over, just about when everyone was going to retire for the night, the young man came to the headman of the village who was here, and he said, I'd like to thank you for your hospitality and for greeting me so warmly, so I would like you to take these 2 fish that I have. And the headman began to sweat. He said, how could you do that to us after we've given you all of this hospitality to offer us a poison fish? And the young man said, of course, the fish is not poison at all. That was just a ploy for your bully, and I'm sure he's never going to bother you again. The fish are very edible. You can eat them any way you like, raw or cook them over the fire. They're very, very delicious, and a taste that maybe you haven't tasted before. But it was exactly as the young man had said. The bully in that village never bothered anyone in that village again. So this is the thread to add to our weaving. And again, could it be that, like all stories, and when we listen to everyone's story and recognize it as a part of ourself, that everyone is offering us a thread. But with this link, could it be that we're weaving that prayer mat, that when as the founder of the Naqshbandi Sufi order did when he was interred, to lay his head at that place where he recognized that his wife had woven the lock that was on his jail door, and all that was needed was the key